Hello, my bone building friends, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I recently had the opportunity to present to Maternal, Infant, and Health Canada, and during that presentation, I talked about using lifestyle choices to prevent osteoporosis. Since that particular presentation is not available as a recording yet, I thought that it would be fun to go through an updated version of the presentation for my YouTube friends. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to go through and talk about lifestyle and the importance of prevention for osteoporosis. Now, there's something that's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about prevention. If you already have osteoporosis, you might be thinking, wait a minute, I already have osteoporosis. How can I prevent? But in looking at prevention, when we're looking and talking about prevention from a public health perspective, we're actually talking about reducing fractures and preventing fractures. So all of the things that I talked about for preventing osteoporosis are also applicable when you already have osteoporosis. They're things that you can do to improve your health and to reduce your risk of having a fracture. So with that in mind, let's talk about prevention for osteoporosis. And I am going to find my reading glasses. So welcome to How to Improve Bone Health and Reduce the Risk of Osteoporosis. For those of you that are new here, I'm Sarah. I'm a 500-hour certified yoga instructor, and I have training that's specific to osteoporosis and yoga. I did my training with Dr. Lauren Fishman. I'm also Bone Fit certified, and I'm a nutritional health coach through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I'm also a proud mom of 5 children, and I'm on a mission to reduce the number of fractures. This beautiful picture is a picture of my grandmother who inspires me every day. I come from a family history with multiple generations of women who've had osteoporosis. My family also has a strong culture of taking care of each other. And while I was growing up, my mom took care of one of my great-grandmas. This meant that when it was time for my maternal grandmother to stop living on her own, she came to live with my family. During the 10 years that we lived together, she experienced 2 osteoporotic hip fractures. When I was in my 20s, I became keenly aware of how serious bone health is. But at that point in time, I didn't know that there was anything that a person could do to improve their bone health. My grandma lost her freedom to go and do what she wanted because of her fractures. And I don't want that to happen to other people. A few years after my grandma passed away, I enrolled in a yoga teacher training, and one of my teachers was also a physical therapist. She mentioned in passing that research had been done about how yoga could be used to help people with osteoporosis. I remember just sitting in this room full of 30 people thinking to myself, there's something that you can do about this. That moment changed my life. I knew in that moment that I had to learn everything that I could about how to improve bone health. After completing my regular yoga teacher training, I trained with Dr. Lauren Fishman, who's now spent more than 15 years researching osteoporosis and has over 100,000 clinical hours testing how yoga can be used to help osteoporosis and improve bone health. He currently teaches at Columbia Medical School and has a private practice in New York City. The best time to prevent osteoporosis for women is when they're in their 20s and even their teens. The next best time is now, right now. Our bones have a remodeling process that happens throughout our lives, where new bone cells are created and old bone is broken down. By age 18 for girls and age 20 for boys, 90% of peak bone mass has been developed. By age 30, peak bone mass for a person's life has been achieved. By the mid-30s, our bodies begin to gradually break down more bone than they establish. This means that the best time to prevent osteoporosis happens early on in a person's life, often during the peak time for having babies as a woman. All is not lost if it never occurred to you to work on your bone health during your 20s. Didn't occur to me. There's still a lot that can be done to improve bone health at any and every age. Our bodies are resilient, and whenever we start working on prevention, it's the right time. This is true even if you've already had a fracture. After a fracture, it's incredibly important to work at improving bone health and to prevent possible future fractures. So let's jump into what's needed for maintaining bone health and preventing osteoporosis. First up, let's talk about vitamin D. After I had my 5th baby at age 33, I started experiencing a lot of pain and swelling in my hands and in my feet. After several years of this, I was eventually diagnosed with having rheumatoid arthritis. The rheumatologist ordered some blood work that included having my vitamin D level checked. When I got my lab work back, I realized that my vitamin D was extremely low. It was a 9.2. I have no idea how long it was at this level, but where it was, this left my body without sufficient vitamin D. Vitamin D is necessary to properly absorb calcium, and it's a major problem if you have low vitamin D for bone health. On average, 40% of adults have insufficient vitamin D. Clearly, I was not alone in my deficit, but no one except a specialist for my arthritis thought to check my vitamin D level. Vitamin D deficiency has become a global health issue, which is usually linked to insufficient exposure to sunlight and insufficient consumption of vitamin D-rich foods. Vitamin D can be checked easily by a blood test. It's important to have your vitamin D level checked once every year, and if your doctor doesn't suggest having it checked, ask your doctor and get it checked. Making sure that you're getting adequate vitamin D to properly absorb calcium is one of the easiest ways to prevent bone loss and osteoporosis. Since vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, it must be maintained within a certain range. For most people, vitamin D levels that are a little bit above 50 is sufficient for good health. Having insufficient vitamin levels at below 30 has a direct effect on bone health, but it can also negatively contribute to developing depression, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and even multiple sclerosis. It's also possible to get too much vitamin D. A vitamin D level above 125 can lead to having an irregular heartbeat, kidney stones, kidney failure, a loss of appetite, dehydration, excessive urination, nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, pain, and confusion. With vitamin D, it's best to stay in the Goldilocks zone, somewhere between 50 to 80. The recommended amounts of vitamin D intake vary by age. In general, we need more vitamin D as we age. It's interesting to notice that there doesn't seem to need to be an increase in vitamin D when a woman is pregnant or breastfeeding. So that's good news. People who are at higher risk for vitamin D deficiency fall into all age groups. Those that are most at risk for vitamin D deficiency include breastfed infants whose only nutrient source is breast milk, older adults whose skin's ability to make vitamin D is reduced, people who have difficulty absorbing fat, people with darker skin, and people who are not regularly exposed to the sun. Vitamin D is found in the flesh of fatty fish like salmon, trout, tuna, and mackerel. Fish liver oils are often good sources for vitamin D. Beef liver, egg yolks, and cheese also have some vitamin D. Mushrooms have variable amounts of vitamin D depending on the exposure to UV light. It's important to note that the animal-based sources are vitamin D3, which is what our bodies need. Mushrooms have vitamin D2, which still requires having the sun convert this form into usable D3 in our bodies. Canada and the United States both fortify milk with vitamin D, but they don't generally fortify cheese or ice cream. Plant-based milks are also often fortified with similar amounts of vitamin D to cow's milk. Many breakfast cereals are also fortified with vitamin D. As plant-based diets are becoming more and more popular for a variety of health, environmental, and animal welfare concerns, it's important to be aware of our vitamin D consumption in our diets and to make sure that we're getting adequate vitamin D, either through our diet or through proper supplementation. Our bone require all kinds of vitamins and minerals for healthy bones. Things like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and other trace minerals. A healthy gut is able to absorb these minerals from the food that we eat, but an unhealthy digestive system negatively impacts the nutrient absorption for bone health. When we eat something, it enters our mouth where our saliva begins to break down our food. Chewing our food slowly and thoroughly helps to mix in the saliva, and it begins the process of digestion, making our nutrients more readily available. Then the food goes down our esophagus and enters our stomach. The acid in our stomachs further breaks down our food. This is why it's helpful for many supplements to have some citrate in them. Citrate helps to break the nutrients down in a supplement along with our stomach acid. Our broken down food molecules that include carbohydrates, proteins, and fats then make their way into the small intestines. In the small intestines, our food is systematically broken down, our nutrients are absorbed, water is removed from our food, and then what's left moves into the large intestine. The small intestine also allows certain particles to be transferred into the bloodstream where they provide necessary fuel for our bodies. Once food has been moved to the large intestine, more water is removed. Vitamins are absorbed by the body, and feces move towards the rectum for elimination. The liver and pancreas are also important parts of digestion. Our livers help to regulate our blood levels by balancing our nutrient levels, producing cholesterol, and filtering out harmful substances from the bloodstream. Our pancreas produces 3 important enzymes: lipase, protease, and amylase, which break down our fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Insulin, which is a hormone that regulates our blood sugar levels, is also produced in the pancreas. Leaky gut happens in the small intestine. The wall of our small intestine is semi-permeable. Only certain things are supposed to be able to get through the wall and into the bloodstream. Usable nutrients should be allowed to pass through, while toxins and undigested food particles should be blocked. The small intestine has microscopic pores on finger-like projections called villi. With leaky gut, the pores and the junctions between the pores widen and get loose, and the undigested food particles and toxins that are supposed to normally be blocked get into the bloodstream. Because these things aren't supposed to be in the blood, they trigger an immune response, which often leads to developing allergies and illness. Imagine that you have a leaky gut and you eat a burger. The burger goes through some processing in the stomach where your stomach acid begins to break it down. When it gets to your small intestine, bits of undigested meat, lettuce, cheese, and bread roll that should move through the small intestine end up slipping through the large pores and loose junctions directly into the blood. Bang! We have foreign particles in the bloodstream, and the immune system starts to kick into high gear. Basically, your immune system says, this stuff shouldn't be here, and I need to attack it. And then your body starts to create antibodies to protect itself. The problem is that the immune system doesn't just build up antibodies to the leaked toxins and food particles, it starts to attack healthy cells too. Once leaky gut starts, everything that you eat starts to leak a little bit of it anyway into the bloodstream. So what started as an irritation could blossom into being a large problem because of the immune response that happens in the body. This leads to having a dysbiosis, an imbalance of bacteria. Overall, the amount of good in bacteria is not in the right balance. This can happen anywhere in the microbiome. It could happen in our skin, in our gut, in the mouth, in the vagina. Gut dysbiosis is the most commonly reported. Dysbiosis is known to cause or weaken inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease, allergies, asthma, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, obesity, and osteoporosis. So there is a direct correlation between gut health and bone health. In 2018, researchers found that intestinal microorganisms can disrupt the balance between bone formation and resorption by indirectly stimulating or inhibiting osteoblasts and osteoclasts. In addition, intestinal microorganisms affect bone metabolism by regulating growth factors or altering bone immune status, and can also alter the metabolism of serotonin, cortisol, and sex hormones, thereby affecting bone mass in mice. Moreover, probiotics, antibiotics, and diet can change the composition of the intestinal microbial flora, thus affecting bone health and also potentially helping to treat bone disease. So that's quite a mouthful, and I encourage you to read through this quote several times yourself. But this means that the condition of our gut can have a positive or negative impact on our bone health. A healthy, balanced gut encourages quality bone growth, while an imbalanced, unhealthy gut inhibits healthy, quality bones. To create the best environment in the gut to support bone health, it's important to balance good and bad bacteria in the gut. An ideal for the gut microbiome is to have about 85% good bacteria and about 15% bad bacteria. Probiotics are good bacteria that live in our guts, mouths, urinary tracts, the vagina, our skin, and lungs. In the gut, they aid in digestion. They also keep our bodies in balance and to protect us against bad bacteria. Probiotics are found in fermented foods like yogurt with live cultures, cultured butter and cheese like cottage cheese, soft cheeses or raw cheese, miso, kombucha, sourdough bread, kimchi, pickles, sauerkraut. It's beneficial to eat fermented or cultured foods several times a week at room temperature or cooler because fermented foods are heat sensitive. When you heat fermented foods, it tends to kill the good bacteria. When we have a healthy gut, the bacteria and enzymes break down the food that we eat and deliver them properly into the bloodstream. It's also important to consume prebiotic foods regularly. All prebiotics are fiber, but not all fiber are prebiotic foods. To be considered a prebiotic food, it must resist gastric acidity, stimulate growth of the intestinal bacteria, and be able to be fermented by the intestinal microflora. In essence, prebiotic foods are fermentable fiber that feed our gut flora. Prebiotics occur naturally in foods such as leeks, asparagus, chicory, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, onions, wheat, oats, and soybeans. Another way to improve gut and bone health is by taking digestive enzymes that help to break down our food. Digestive enzymes are split into 3 classes. There's proteolytic enzymes that are needed to digest protein. Lipases are needed to digest fat, and amylases are needed to digest carbohydrates. A broad-spectrum digestive enzyme supplement can help with digestion and will likely contain amylase, which is naturally found in the saliva and our pancreatic juice and works to break down large starchy molecules into maltose. It's needed to break down carbohydrates, starches, and sugars, which are prevalent in basically all plant foods. This includes potatoes, fruits, vegetables, grains. And then there's pepsin. Pepsin is an enzyme that breaks down protein. It's found in the gastric juice in the stomach, and it helps to break protein into smaller units called polypeptides. And then there's lipase. Lipase is made by the pancreas and is secreted into the small intestine. After mixing with bile, it helps to digest fats and triglycerides into fatty acids that we need to digest fat-containing foods like dairy products, nuts, oils, eggs, and meat. Besides making sure that we're getting sufficient nutrients to maintain our bones, another highly important aspect of osteoporosis prevention is to consistently do weight-bearing exercise. So it's essential that we maintain our muscle strength by having healthy bones. The phrase "use it or lose it" is very applicable here. Strength is a key component of building high-quality bones. So this picture is a great depiction of Wolff's Law. You'll notice in looking at the pictures of different bones, and the femur bone is the big bone that's in our thighs. So notice how the bone is fairly straight at birth. It begins to grow with use. Notice the change at about 3 years old. Now look at the femur bones of the children who are both 5 years old. The child who's walking and running around has added bone at the femoral neck where the femur connects to the hip bone. But the child who isn't walking and running around, who's a paraplegic, doesn't have that additional bone growth. This principle applies throughout our lives as far as bone growth goes. We use our muscles to pull on our bones, and we need to have strong muscles for them to actually pull on our bones. So where we are using our muscles to pull on our bones, then that sends a message to our bodies to stimulate new bone growth. The body reinforces the areas where it's being used. So use it or lose it. It's significant to note that muscle loss begins in the 30s, which is far earlier than a young and healthy person generally considers herself or himself to be aging. From a 2010 study, it was noted that one of the most striking effects of age is the involuntary loss of muscle mass, strength, and function, termed sarcopenia. Muscle mass decreases approximately 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30, and this rate of decline is even higher after the age of 60. Remember the bone density graph over time, that peak bone mass slide? Muscle strength and bone density follow the same line together. So to maintain our bones and muscles, we have to use them. Muscle loss increases the risk of having a disability as we age. According to research done in muscle tissue changes with age regarding the consequences of muscle loss, bone density decreases, joint stiffness increases, and there's a small reduction in stature, kyphosis. All of these changes have probable implications for several conditions, including type 2 diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and osteoporosis. That's why it's so important to maintain muscle mass as well as our bone strength. One of the easiest ways to maintain strong, healthy bones and your body in general is to engage in regular, consistent, weight-bearing exercise. There are many ways to do weight-bearing exercise. Different ways of engaging in weight-bearing exercise, including adding additional weight to your exercise regimen, doing yoga that includes weight-bearing exercise, or Pilates. Teaching yoga, I'm keenly aware of many different styles of yoga. The different styles of yoga have different benefits. In order to use yoga as weight-bearing exercise, it's important to include a style of yoga that has weight bearing as part of it, with poses like plank and side plank. And if you already have osteoporosis and you're interested in doing either Pilates or yoga for osteoporosis, it's essential that you find and work with a teacher who is trained to adapt Pilates or yoga in an osteoporosis safe way. Finally, it's important to manage stress to maintain healthy bones. Chronic stress negatively affects our bone health. A study from 2015 found that chronic stress activates the HPA axis in the sympathetic nervous system, which suppresses the secretion of gonadal hormone and growth hormone and increases inflammatory cytokines, eventually leading to bone loss by inhibiting bone formation and stimulating bone resorption. In other words, long-term exposure to stress hormones slows the formation of new bone and accelerates the breakdown of old bone. Yikes! Talk about stressful. The bone loss is definitely stressful. So one thing that we can do to help improve our bone health is to manage our stress levels and the stress hormones in our bodies. Let's look at several ways that we can manage chronic stress that contribute positively to bone health. Exercising, eating a healthy diet, getting enough quality sleep, managing our time well, and setting aside time for leisure activities. I suspect these are all things we want naturally, so it should be a piece of cake, right? According to the Mayo Clinic, virtually any form of exercise does your body good. So find something that you enjoy, whether it be dancing, hiking, or simply going for a walk. The key is to move. Some of the benefits of exercise on stress include increasing endorphins, improving mood and concentration, and making it easier to sleep. Those sound like good benefits to me. I hope they do to you too. Having a balanced diet supports a healthy immune system and helps to repair damaged cells, providing energy for the body to better cope with stress. Omega-3 fats help to regulate cortisol production. Eating regularly helps to keep our blood sugar balanced, which reduces stress. Increasing fiber increases alertness and lessens perceived stress. And reducing caffeine can reduce stress and improve sleep. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, 35.2% of adults get less than 7 hours of sleep each night. Our bodies need quality sleep to repair our muscles and to improve our concentration. When we don't get enough sleep, it can contribute to a variety of health problems, including heart disease, diabetes, depression, and anxiety. Regular sleep deprivation can contribute to the activation of our body's fight or flight response. To improve sleep, create a nightly routine or a bedtime ritual. Remove electronics from your bedroom and make sure that your bedroom is dark. Avoid caffeine for several hours before bedtime, and work at exercising earlier in the day. If you want to exercise before bed, light stretching can help to create a sense of calm in the body that can make falling asleep easier. Managing our time and tasks is about prioritizing what's most important to us and making sure that we get to what is most important to us. This means planning ahead and keeping track of what needs to be done. To-do lists and a calendar can be helpful here. Create goals that align with your values and make sure that you're spending your time in a way that aligns your values and your goals. When you have a plan, it lessens the stress of worrying about how everything is going to get done. Make time to enjoy life with your family and friends. Prioritizing having fun with your loved ones, sometimes with them and sometimes without them, is important. Take time to relax. It's an important part of reducing stress. So in summary, the 4 things that you can do to maintain bone health and reduce your risk of osteoporosis include getting enough vitamin D and other necessary vitamins, minerals, nutrients. Work to improve and to maintain having a healthy gut. Engage in consistent weight-bearing exercise and reduce your stress. Thank you. I hope that you have found this information helpful and that it's going to inspire you to improve your bone health and to reduce your risk of having fractures. Prevention at every level is important. And if you found this information helpful, please share it with someone that you know and love. I look forward to doing another YouTube video soon, and we'll talk then.